Leadership's not really for women like her, my manager said, his voice dripping with lazy confidence through the thin conference room wall. I froze mid-step, holding my coffee like a prop in a play I hadn't auditioned for. She's reliable, he continued, chuckling, but she's not visionary. You know how they are. Great with details, not big-picture thinkers. There was a faint laugh from whoever was on the call with him, then the rustle of papers, then silence. Just long enough for me to realize that I wasn't supposed to hear any of it. But I did. Every word. I stood there for a few seconds, watching the condensation slide down my coffee cup. I should have walked away. I should have shrugged it off like every other time he'd made a small, cutting remark. But something about the way he said women like her lodged itself under my ribs like a splinter I couldn't ignore. I turned, walked back to my desk, and sat down. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, pretending to type. On my monitor, my reflection stared back at me. Tired, controlled, small. That was the morning something cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically. Quietly. Like a bridge giving way under years of quiet weight. If you're still watching at this point, do yourself a favor. Tap subscribe and like. Because if you've ever been underestimated, this story is for you. Back to that moment. My name's Amy, and I'd been at Stratus Dynamics for 6 years. I wasn't flashy, I wasn't loud, but I got results. Consistent ones. The kind that didn't make headlines, but built empires. My boss, Gregory Steele, loved results. As long as they had his name on them. When I joined, he'd been the golden boy of the company. Charismatic, quick with buzzwords. The kind of man who turned networking into performance art. People said he could sell sunlight to the desert. What they didn't say was that he sold other people's work as his own. And me? I was his favorite product. For years, I'd been the quiet hand behind the deals he bragged about. I wrote the onboarding frameworks, managed client transitions, and handled fires that would have burned through the company if I hadn't stayed late, unpaid, fixing them. He'd call it teamwork. But the team was me and my insomnia. Still, I stayed. Because that's what you're told to do, right? Keep your head down. Work hard. Be patient. Recognition will come. Except it doesn't. It was around that same time that Greg started preparing his Q4 miracle, as he called it. He'd been working on a big deal with 3 of our top-tier clients, Vection Labs, Atlas Core, and Meridian Biotech. Deals I had built from scratch. Every presentation deck, every client correspondence, every forecast had my fingerprints all over it. But when Greg sent the summary reports to the executive board, my name was gone. Replaced with team lead Gregory Steele. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I'd learned that silence was my sharpest weapon. It let me listen, observe, document. Because what Greg didn't know was that while he was practicing his leadership monologues, I was building a different kind of presentation, one he'd never get to rehearse. The first file I created was titled December Portfolio Backup. Innocent enough. Inside it, I started saving everything. Original drafts, time-stamped edits, meeting notes, even the Slack messages where he delegated my work back to himself. Then I created another folder. Private. Offline. Encrypted. Its name? Northwind. Because if he thought I was a harmless breeze, he had no idea what kind of storm was coming. A week later, I was in the break room when I overheard Greg again, this time bragging to the CFO's assistant. Next quarter, we're scaling to $25 million in renewals. I've restructured client engagement completely. I nearly laughed out loud. I had restructured it. I sipped my coffee and listened. He kept talking, his tone casual but arrogant. Honestly, once we close Vection, I'll hit my bonus cap. Probably around $900,000. No, wait, $980,000. That number stuck. $980,000. Nearly $1 million. Earned on the back of my work. My weekends, my patience. That was when the quiet fracture became a fault line. From that day on, I documented everything. Every modified file. Every email sent from his account that mirrored mine. Every call recap he forwarded to leadership under his name. I wasn't angry anymore. I was focused. Cold. Greg was too busy celebrating his own genius to notice that the very structure holding up his empire was shifting beneath him, one spreadsheet at a time. By December, his visionary leadership had become the company's favorite success story. Posters, interviews, even a LinkedIn spotlight. And me? I smiled, clapped during meetings, and nodded through his fake humility. But in the privacy of my apartment, I was preparing something else. Something final. Because leadership, I realized, isn't about who talks the loudest. It's about who builds quietly and knows when to walk away. And the morning Greg got his $980,000 bonus, I was ready to do exactly that. To walk away and leave behind the kind of truth that doesn't need to shout to destroy a man. When people picture revenge, they imagine shouting, slam doors, maybe a dramatic resignation speech that goes viral on LinkedIn. Mine started with something far less cinematic, a spreadsheet. It was a gray Monday morning in November when I opened a blank Excel file and typed the title, Client Attribution Overview. No one in the office would have blinked. Data sheets were my specialty. Greg used to call me the spreadsheet whisperer when he wanted something fixed before his next presentation. I didn't smile anymore when he said it. Each row on that sheet represented one thing Greg had stolen. Projects, clients, initiatives, ideas. I began filling in the details. Column A, client name. Column B, deal size. Column C, original project lead. Column D, presentation credits. Column E, evidence. By noon, I already had 12 rows filled. At first, I just wanted to protect myself. To make sure if something went wrong, I had proof. But the deeper I went, the clearer it became. Greg's entire reputation was built on lies. It started small. A client named Atlas Corp had sent him an email thanking me for helping them streamline their reporting system. Greg forwarded that same email to the executive team. Except he'd edited it. My name was gone. Then there was Meridian Biotech. I'd written the onboarding strategy and coordinated with their IT lead through countless 2 a.m. messages. When Greg presented the results at a board meeting, he said, "My team developed an innovative rollout framework." My team. That sentence hit harder than any insult. Because there was no team. Just me. If you're still watching, you probably know that feeling. The quiet, nauseating realization that someone's been taking credit for your life's work. That's where the story really begins to turn. Because after that day, I stopped reacting. I started collecting. I made copies of project decks before Greg finalized them. I archived client call transcripts, forwarded emails to my personal inbox, and kept an offline folder on a password-protected drive. I wasn't planning an expose. I was documenting a crime scene. Around that time, HR started sending out performance check-ins. Harmless on the surface. But after 6 years, I knew what they meant. Greg was laying groundwork for a soft termination. Constructive offboarding, they called it once. That week, my feedback email arrived. "Amy, we've noticed some concerns about collaboration and visibility. Greg mentioned you've been resistant to new leadership direction." I stared at the screen, almost laughing. Resistant? I'd been erased. I replied politely, attaching 3 client thank you emails and a project timeline showing I'd hit every deadline early. No response. The following Friday, Greg cornered me by the break room. "Don't take the feedback personally," he said, sipping his overpriced protein shake. "You just need to learn how to, share the spotlight. Leadership loves team players." He smiled as if he hadn't just stabbed me in the back and asked me to applaud. That night, I added another sheet to my file. This one was titled Behavioral Documentation, Supervisor. I logged every comment, every coaching conversation, every unexplained performance flag. I also added one more thing. A note to myself. Stay calm. Truth needs quiet to grow teeth. By December, the office was buzzing about Greg's bonus. People whispered numbers in the hallway. $800,000, $950,000, almost $1 million. He played it down, of course, but I saw the new watch, the designer briefcase, the extra bounce in his walk. I was sitting 2 desks away when his assistant congratulated him. He laughed and said, "All those late nights paid off." We crushed Q4 late nights. Mine. That was when I started building the list. I opened a new Word document. Simpler, easier to print. The first line read, Client Impact Summary, Q4, prepared by Amy R., original author. Under each client, I wrote a short paragraph describing my contributions, clear, factual, supported by timestamps and file paths. For each project, I noted the first date of contact, the email sent, and the key deliverables. It wasn't revenge. It was insurance. Still, as the list grew, I couldn't help but notice how neatly it mirrored Greg's strategic vision report. Word for word in some sections. He hadn't even changed the phrasing. He'd stolen not just credit, but my voice. One evening, while finalizing numbers for Vection Labs, I got a message from the client's VP. Amy, really appreciate your clarity during today's call. You make this stuff easy to trust. That line stuck with me. Easy to trust. I realized that was the one thing Greg couldn't steal. Relationships. My clients didn't trust him. They trusted me. So I started quietly checking in. Nothing dramatic. A few messages here and there. Just confirming you received the updated onboarding plan. Let me know if there's anything we can improve next quarter. Polite, professional. Each reply confirmed what I already knew. They saw me as the real face of their success. That's when I understood the real leverage I held. Numbers can be manipulated, credit can be stolen. But loyalty? That's earned. And Greg had none of it. By mid-December, my client impact summary stretched 12 pages long. I printed it once, clean, formatted, signed. Then slid it into a folder and locked it in my desk drawer. The label read, Q4 deliverables, internal. If anyone saw it, they'd assume it was just another report. But to me, it was something else entirely. It was the first quiet step toward freedom. The moment I decided I wasn't waiting for recognition anymore. I was preparing for justice. By January, Greg's smile had become sharper, thinner, like a knife someone forgot to wash. The office buzzed with New Year optimism, resolutions, and endless talk about Q1 growth projections. But beneath the fake energy, I could sense something shifting. The HR director started dropping by my desk more often. The CFO's assistant suddenly wanted updates on project budgets I'd already submitted. And Greg? He'd begun copying leadership on every email to me, always with a faint tone of condescension. Amy, please ensure accuracy this time. Let's not miss another deadline. Double-check your client communications, can't afford mistakes. The thing was, there were no mistakes. He was creating a paper trail. I recognized the pattern. Overwhelm, isolate, discredit. The soft layoff method. It's subtle. Just enough to make you question your sanity. One misplaced comma becomes carelessness. One missed call becomes unreliability. By the time HR gets involved, they have patterns. Patterns Greg invented. That was the week I realized I wasn't just protecting myself anymore. I was preparing for war. If you're still here, hit that subscribe button, because what happens next is the reason you never underestimate the quiet ones. On Wednesday morning, Greg called me into his office. He was all charm. Amy, sit down. Listen, I know last quarter was intense. Leadership's just concerned about your ability to scale with the company's future direction. Translation, we're setting you up. He smiled, folding his hands like a benevolent mentor. You've got great potential. You really do. You just need to work on visibility. Be more collaborative. Maybe shadow someone senior to refine your strategic approach? I almost laughed. I'd been running his strategies for 2 years. Instead, I nodded. I understand. I'll document everything moving forward, just to be clear on performance metrics. His smile faltered for half a second, just enough to confirm he knew what I meant. Documentation. He dismissed me, probably thinking I'd crawl away and start overperforming to prove myself. But I walked straight to the copy room, closed the door, and took out my phone. I recorded a voice note, January 12th. Greg implied performance concerns. No formal warning issued. Confirmed focus on documentation. I didn't want revenge. I wanted evidence. 2 days later, the setup escalated. Greg forwarded me an urgent client project, Vection Labs system update. The same one I'd finished weeks ago. The version he sent was incomplete, outdated. If I used it, it would make me look careless. Classic move. So I sent him a short reply. Noted. Please confirm this is the latest approved version. I'm seeing a discrepancy in file date, no accusation. Just accountability. He didn't respond. Instead, the next morning, I got an email from HR. Hi, Amy. We'd like to schedule a quick check-in about project management practices. I almost smiled. The trap had been set. Only it wasn't for me anymore. Because behind the scenes, my Northwind folder had doubled in size. Every version, every timestamp, every deleted comment, saved and mirrored. I'd even started exporting call logs and saving calendar invites, noting every instance where Greg had reassigned my meetings to himself. I was no longer scared, just patient. A week later, Greg slipped up. He was in the break room with Tyler from finance, loud as always, like the walls were his audience. Nearly $1 million bonus, he said, laughing. Not bad for a quarter that almost went sideways. Saved it with my quick thinking. Tyler asked what he meant. Greg smirked. Vection, Meridian, Atlas Core, those were mine. I rebuilt the frameworks from scratch. Amy's work just needed polish. I stood by the doorway, out of sight, pretending to read the notice board. The air around me went cold. It wasn't the lie that hurt anymore. It was how easy it came to him. That night, I backed up everything again. This time to an external hard drive I kept in my apartment safe. I printed copies of critical documents and labeled them. Client attribution, Q4 and Q1 transition. Then I did something Greg would never have expected. I reached out to an attorney. Her name was Vanessa Price, a quiet professional recommended by an ex-employee who'd left Stratos Dynamics amicably, only to later settle for a substantial sum. I met her at a small cafe downtown. She listened as I explained everything. Greg's theft of credit, the altered project decks, the false feedback loop with HR. She didn't interrupt, just took notes. When I finished, she leaned forward. Don't confront him, she said. Keep documenting. Date everything. Let them think you're compliant. They're building a case against you, but we'll build one stronger. If it goes to audit, you'll have every proof you need. Her calmness felt like oxygen. She added one more thing. Amy, when the time comes, don't shout. Just hand them the truth and walk away. Over the next 2 weeks, I followed her advice to the letter. I arrived early, stayed late, responded promptly, documented everything. And while Greg strutted through meetings with his $1 million grin, I sat quietly, taking notes, each one a thread that would eventually unravel him. He had no idea that his visibility strategy was lighting up the very trail that would expose him. By the end of January, my Northwind file wasn't just documentation. It was a mirror, one that showed exactly who Greg Steele really was when no one else was looking. And soon, the entire company would see it too. By mid-February, the office felt different. Maybe it was me. Maybe it was the tension that hums right before a storm breaks. Greg had started pacing more during meetings, barking at interns, interrupting directors. His arrogance had grown proportionally to his bonus. Everyone could see he was untouchable, or so they thought. I'd stopped reacting to his taunts weeks ago. When he joked, "Amy, try not to mix up the numbers this time," I just smiled and nodded. What he didn't know was that I had already memorized every number in his so-called visionary report. The same report I'd built, cell by cell, formula by formula. It was around that time that I received an unexpected message from an old contact, Ethan, a senior recruiter from Meridian Partners, one of our competitor firms. We'd met years ago at an industry conference. He'd always said, "If you ever get tired of making other people rich, call me." That night, I finally did. If you're still watching, you might want to stick around, because this is where quiet planning turns into something much bigger. Ethan picked up on the second ring. "Amy, been a while. What made you call?" I hesitated for only a second. "Let's just say I'm exploring options." His tone shifted. Professional now. "Understood." You still managing the Vection and Meridian accounts? I am, I said carefully. He paused, as if running the numbers in his head. You're sitting on gold, Amy. How soon could you move? I'm not moving yet, I said. But hypothetically, if I were, I'd want a clean exit. No noise, no mess. Ethan chuckled. Then you came to the right person. Let's grab coffee tomorrow. The next morning, I met him at a cafe near the river, quiet enough for conversation, loud enough to blend in. He slid a folder across the table. Here's what I can offer. Senior implementation lead, salary bump, signing bonus, and remote flexibility. What we'd need from you is simple. Relationships. You've got them. We'd give you the resources to build properly this time. He didn't need to say it. He was asking if my clients would follow. I didn't answer right away. Instead, I thought of all those nights staying up to fix Greg's errors, all the weekends I'd spent rewriting his reports, all the times he'd told me I was support staff with a smile. Finally, I said, if I go, I won't go alone. Ethan smiled. That's what I hoped you'd say. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a glass of red wine beside it. The apartment was quiet, except for the soft hum of the heater and the occasional city noise outside. I opened a new spreadsheet. Local only, no company drive this time. Title, Exit Blueprint. First column, client name. Second, account value. Third, relationship strength, 1 to 10. Fourth, transition risk, low, medium, high. I started listing them. Vection Labs, 9 out of 10. The VP still used templates I'd built last year. Meridian Biotech, 8 out of 10. The CEO had called me directly for updates when Greg was unavailable. Atlas Core, 7 out of 10. Some loyalty to Greg, but mostly convenience. I highlighted the ones that mattered in green. The clients who trusted me, not the company. When I finished, I leaned back and stared at the document. It wasn't revenge. It was truth in spreadsheet form. For the first time in months, I felt calm. The next week, Greg started dropping more hints. So, Amy, he said during one team meeting, leadership's been talking about structural changes. Just so you're not surprised if things shift, I knew that tone. It was the prelude to elimination. He was setting me up for a performance-based transition, probably already drafting the justification email. I nodded. Good to know, Greg. Thanks for the transparency. He smiled, clearly pleased with himself, but 2 hours later, I sent a different kind of email. From my personal account to myself. Summary of February 17th team meeting. Greg referenced potential structural changes affecting my role. No documented concerns or performance issues on record. Vanessa, my attorney, had taught me that trick. If it's not written down, it doesn't exist, she'd said. And every time Greg thought he was playing chess, I was quietly writing the rulebook. By March, Ethan sent over the official offer. 6-figure base, performance bonus, and most importantly, a signing bonus that matched 3 months of my salary. I read the letter 3 times, then whispered to myself, it's time. I signed digitally, closed my laptop, and exhaled. The next step was clear. I would leave cleanly, professionally, with documentation so solid it could survive a forensic audit. I began preparing my final package, the client impact summary, the one Greg had stripped my name from months ago. Only this time, I made sure every contribution, timestamp, and email chain was included. I formatted it neatly, printed it on company letterhead, and titled it, Client Transition Overview, Amy Roberts. It looked harmless, professional, routine. But inside that document was every inconsistency that tied Greg's $1 million bonus to my work. I placed it in a blue folder, sealed it with a paperclip, and slipped it into my desk drawer. On the front, in small, neat letters, I wrote 3 words, for HR delivery. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm. For once, I didn't dread going in, because I wasn't walking into Greg's world anymore. I was walking out of it. And when I did, the truth would walk out with me. The morning Greg got his $980,000 bonus, he showed up an hour late, sunglasses on, holding a latte like a trophy. The office buzzed with fake congratulations. Someone had brought cupcakes. HR had sent out an email calling him a model of leadership and innovation. I watched from my desk, typing the final lines of my resignation letter. No speech, no drama, just one clean paragraph. Please accept this as my formal resignation, effective 2 weeks from today. Thank you for the opportunity. I printed it, signed my name, and placed it into the blue folder I'd prepared, the same one holding my client transition overview. At 10:15 a.m., Greg strutted into my cubicle area, flashing that smug grin that never reached his eyes. Amy, quick update. Vection wants the revised implementation by end of week. Make sure it's flawless, yeah? I looked up, smiled politely. Of course, Greg. But you'll need to reassign it. I won't be here next week. His grin faltered. Sorry? I stood, folder in hand. I'm resigning. Effective immediately. HR has the notice and documentation. For a moment, he just blinked, trying to process what I'd said. Then he laughed, loudly, mockingly. You're quitting? Right after we hit record numbers? Bad timing, Amy. Not a smart move for your career, I smiled back. Maybe. Or maybe perfect timing. And with that, I walked to HR. If you've made it this far, you'll want to stay till the end. Because what happened next proved one simple truth. Paperwork has more power than pride. Jill from HR looked up when I entered her office. She tried to smile, but it faltered when she saw the folder. I just wanted to submit this, I said, placing it neatly on her desk. She flipped it open, expecting a routine resignation. Her eyes paused on the second document, the client transition overview. What's this? She asked. Just something to help with the handover, I said lightly. Each client file includes my contributions, communication records, and original project timelines. Might make it easier to avoid disruption. Her eyes skimmed the first few pages and her face changed. These are all Greg's clients. Greg's? I tilted my head. Or mine. I didn't need to say more. The timestamps, email chains, and notes spoke louder than I ever could. Jill excused herself. Muttering something about needing to loop in finance, I left quietly, passing Greg's office on the way out. He was laughing into his headset again, probably bragging about his leadership results. He didn't even look up as I walked by. The next morning, I was sitting at my kitchen table with coffee when my phone buzzed. It was a message from a former coworker. What did you do? CFO just called an emergency audit. Something about client attribution and bonus validation. I didn't reply. I just sat there, sipping my coffee, while the pieces started falling exactly where they were supposed to. By noon, the updates started trickling in. Greg had been called into a closed-door meeting with the CFO, 2 members of legal, and HR. The door had stayed shut for nearly an hour. By 1, people said the CFO's voice could be heard down the hallway. Explain why these deliverables list your name when the metadata shows Amy Roberts as the author. Someone else claimed the CFO had slammed a folder on the table, the one I'd left behind. Greg apparently went pale. At 3 o'clock, my phone rang again. It was Ethan from Meridian Partners. You're trending, Amy, he said, half joking. Industry grapevine says Stratus Dynamics just froze an executive bonus pending review. That wouldn't happen to be connected to you, would it? I laughed softly. I just left a folder. Remind me never to get on your bad side, he said. That evening, another message arrived, this time from Debbie, my main contact at Vection Labs. Heard you've moved on, Amy. Congratulations. If your new company's open to collaborations, we'd love to continue working with you. And then another one, from Meridian Biotech. Let us know your new business email. We'd prefer to keep consistency with you handling our account. 3 clients reached out within 24 hours. Greg's empire was already cracking. 2 days later, Stratos Dynamics issued an internal memo. Following discrepancies in Q4 reporting, the executive board has initiated an independent review of performance-based compensation. Until further notice, all Q4 bonuses are suspended. I didn't need to read between the lines. Greg's $980,000 leadership award had just turned into a liability. A former coworker texted later that week. He's out. Security escorted him from the building. Legal's involved. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. My first day at Meridian Partners came quietly. No celebration, no victory lap. Just a new office, a new start. And peace. During lunch, Ethan stopped by my desk. "You settling in?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Feels good to work somewhere that actually values integrity." He grinned. "By the way, those Vection and Meridian accounts?" "They're officially onboarded." I nodded, hiding the satisfaction that warmed through me. Later that afternoon, I opened my email. At the top of my inbox was a message from an unknown sender. "You didn't have to do that." No name, but I didn't need one. I recognized Greg's style. Condescending, defensive. I typed back a single line. "Leadership's not really for men like you." Then I deleted his message and emptied my trash folder. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive with noise or applause. Sometimes it's just quiet correction. Truth unfolding exactly the way it should. Greg had taught me one thing. Arrogance blinds people. But integrity? It sees everything. And when it's time, it speaks.